This is the story of Lacey Ellen Fletcher, a 36-year-old disabled woman whose parents neglected her and left her to rot in her own feces on their living room couch for 12 years. Hello, and welcome to Killer Crimes. Like and subscribe for more videos.
We begin with a case that has been hard for even the most seasoned investigators to forget: the death of Lacey Fletcher. Last January, what was left of her rotting 100-pound body was found embedded, melted into a couch in her parents' Louisiana home. Investigators say the sofa was soaked with urine, feces, and other bodily fluids. Fletcher was disabled, and her parents, according to police, just left her there for years until she died. WBRZ Chief Investigative Reporter Chris Nakamoto has been following the investigation from the very beginning. He joins us with an update that we first brought you here on The Factor months ago. And joining us on The Factor Uncensored tonight is Chris Nakamoto, investigative reporter from WBRZ TV in Baton Rouge. Chris, you and I talked about this very disturbing case several months ago involving Lacey Fletcher, the 36-year-old who died in her parents' house. For those who don't know the past history, first tell us how she was found in her parents' house, and then we'll get to the latest news.
It was just an extraordinary situation. Paramedics showed up at her house last January, and they found her literally melted into the couch, covered in feces, looked like her hair hadn't been brushed for years, totally neglected. The coroner's office ruled that she was totally neglected. She was literally fused to the sofa. This as her parents were coming and going, living normal lives, going to work. Meanwhile, they have their daughter who had not gotten up from the sofa in what the coroner estimates was possibly years.
Wow. And what kind of illness did she have that they left her on that sofa without attending to her?
She had a condition called Asperger's syndrome. And so essentially it was just kind of a situation where she became more and more reclusive. A lot of the neighbors told us as we began covering the story, they used to see her outside playing, and then all of a sudden they stopped seeing her as she got older. And so they just thought that maybe she had moved on and moved away. But turns out she was living right there in her parents' living room, and that's where she died, unfortunately, as well.
Now, initially, when this case broke, her parents were charged with murder. But now there's been a change in that, right?
That's right. So they were charged with murder and cruelty to the infirm. And from our understanding, it can't be both. And so as the DA was kind of looking at everything, their lawyers filed some court motions that basically had those charges removed because the indictment had some added language after. And so the new indictment was tossed on a technicality, but we did speak with the district attorney, and he says he plans on bringing it back up and having this couple re-indicted because he believes justice won't be served until they serve jail time.
Now, this brought a lot of public outrage. A lot of people have been following this. Even here at Fox 26 in Houston, our story was viewed 1 million times. People just outraged by this. Is there a chance that if this mother and father of Lacey Fletcher's re-indicted, could it be a lesser charge, or will it still be murder? Because I think people are concerned about that.
Certainly anything's a possibility, but when we spoke with the DA, it sounds like he's trying to press on and go after these two people on the murder charge because of what had happened to Lacey. When we spoke with the coroner last year, he said, look, I deal with death every day, and this is something that I can't even get out of my head. The smell was just awful. He said, the minute he walked into that house, he left and actually had to vomit in the front yard. And so he said, the fact that I deal with death all the time, and this impacted me in such a way, it's extraordinary to think that these people, her mom and dad, were literally living their lives, coming and going, and no one managed to know that their daughter was sitting there rotting away on the sofa of their living room.
No, it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, that the mom and dad are out on bond right now while all of this is going on.
That's correct. So they were out on bond initially after they were charged, but now that the indictments have totally been tossed, that bond really doesn't exist anymore because those charges are invalid. So the DA says within the next 2 weeks, they'll be charged again. they'll be rearrested, and then another bond will be set.
And for you, Chris, have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, and I think they said at one point, because she was on the sofa so long, maybe she ingested some of the sofa, started eating it, and there were other foreign things found in her body that she may have been eating as a result after the autopsy?
That is correct. They found sofa material. They found feces in her stomach. I mean, she was literally just sitting in this pool of rot, just fused there and just left for dead. In the 16 years that I've covered news here in the Baton Rouge community, I've never seen anything like it. When we talked to the coroner, he's been doing this over 40-something years in that parish. He said he's never seen anything like it. So when you think that another human being could leave a loved one or a family member in this type of condition, it really makes you just question what their, what was going on with them. Did they have something going on in their minds to think that this could be normal? And the fact that they could live a normal life outside of the fact that their daughter's rotting away, dying on the sofa. They were going to church, to work, to the grocery store. I mean, just living like you and I would live as normal citizens on a day-to-day basis.
Did they allow anyone into the house during the time that she was alive and sitting and just marinating in that stew on the sofa?
They did not. So we spoke with a lot of neighbors when we started investigating this situation, and they said the last time that they went into that house was probably about 15 years ago. So that was about the time that it stopped. When she stopped going outside and became a recluse and just went into the house, that's when they kind of stopped allowing visitors to come in. But you can only imagine what it was like. The fact that she just rotted into the sofa. They said all the wood floors inside were buckling from feces and urine. They said just the stench permeating throughout that house was just a smell they will never forget.
Wow, just a horrible situation. Chris Nakamoto with WBRZ TV in Baton Rouge. Thank you again, and thank you for keeping us updated.
This story takes us to Slaughter, Louisiana. Slaughter is a small town located in East Feliciana Parish, Louisiana. Just 20 miles from the state capital, Baton Rouge. On January 3, 2022, emergency medical workers in Louisiana responded to a 911 call from a woman stating her daughter was not breathing. The workers were horrified to find Fletcher lying in a pile of her feces and urine, seemingly melted into the couch. She was found covered in maggots, bed sores, and her body had fused into a hole in the living room couch. The paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene, but the coroner's report later confirmed that she had been dead for 24 to 48 hours. It was reported that 36-year-old Lacey Ellen Fletcher suffered from locked-in syndrome and autism. Reports from the coroner, Lacey may have been sitting in her own waste for around 12 years. Suffering from ulcers, bacterial infections, bed sores, and eventually died as a result of severe medical neglect. At the time of her death, Lacey only weighed 96 pounds. Lacey didn't grow up like a normal girl. She was autistic, and even into her teenage years she enjoyed children activities, like Barbie dolls and toys, not those of a young woman. But neighbors described her as visually normal and interacted with friends like any other girl. It was when she grew in age, Lacey began to develop extreme social anxiety and eventually had to become homeschooled. Neighbors claimed they stopped seeing Lacey and grew curious if she had moved away or gotten married, but when her father was questioned, he reported she was still around and nothing else was ever thought of it. No one saw Lacey again in over a decade.
In January, East Feliciana investigators found a body of a woman who essentially deteriorated into a couch. They suspect she suffered from years of neglect. Investigators say Lacey Fletcher was disabled and in the care of her parents, Sheila and Clay Fletcher. Her father resigned as president of the Baton Rouge Civil War Roundtable Tuesday. The program director, John Potts, has known Clay Fletcher for roughly 6 years and is stunned by the news.
Shock. Because it doesn't match with my experience of him. He's completely different than what you would expect someone like that to be.
Photos of the couch, which are too graphic to be shown on air, paint a horrific picture of where the young woman lived and died, covered in feces, urine, and worn away from years of extensive use.
The details are horrific. There's no doubt about that. And I can't conceive of how something like that could even happen.
Neighbors and friends say they never knew they had a daughter.
He mentioned that she passed away in January, And that was all I know of that.
Her mother works as an assistant to the city prosecutor in Zachary and is now on administrative leave. District Attorney Sam DeQuilla says they haven't been taken into custody because they're not considered a flight risk. The DA is asking a grand jury to bring second-degree murder charges against both parents. Potts doesn't know if Clay Fletcher will be welcomed back to the group, saying they're seeing if there will be a trial and what the verdict will be.
The wait-and-see attitude. That's what the law is for.
Ariel Salk, NBC Local 33 News.
And we're following some developing news regarding a high-profile case in East Feliciana Parish.
Charges for the parents of a woman found dead on a couch in January of last year have been thrown out for now. Our Lester Dewey has been following this one for us. Lester, a lot of folks probably wondering how this happened. Piece it together for us.
Yeah, Scotty, back in May of last year, grand jury indicted Clay and Sheila Fletcher, as you can see behind me, on second-degree murder charges after their disabled daughter Lacey was found dead on a couch with urine and feces all around her. But those charges have been dropped, at least for now. The couple was expected to stand trial for their charges later this month, but at a hearing on May 30th, District Judge Catherine Jones with the 20th JDC granted a motion by defense attorneys to quash the indictment. I'm told this had something to do with the wording of the indictment itself, so Sheila and Clay Fletcher remain out on bond at this time. However, District Attorney Sam DeQuilla tells me he does plan to bring the case back before a different grand jury on June 19th, so these charges could ultimately be reinstated at that time. DeQuilla is hopeful to get a new trial date before the year ends. Guys?
All right, a lot of moving parts, Lester. Thank you.
Reports state Lacey had developed locked-in syndrome. This is a rare disorder of the nervous system that paralyzes all voluntary muscles except for the muscles that control eye movement. Although she was consciously aware and could think, she was not able to move or speak. It was believed that Fletcher had been left on the couch, with this condition in the same spot, for years. Despite her deteriorating condition, her parents claimed that she had not been to a doctor in over 10 years. On January 3, 2022, Sheila Fletcher and Clay Fletcher, the parents of Lacey Ellen Fletcher, were arrested and taken into custody in connection with their daughter's death. During the Fletchers' interview with authorities, despite her having locked-in syndrome and not able to speak or respond, her parents claimed that they did not take Lacey to see a doctor because she refused to go. They also suggested that she never complained about her sores, and that her mother Sheila routinely treated her wounds. Subsequently, a grand jury indicted the parents for murder. Following the grand jury's decision, arrest warrants were immediately issued for the Fletchers. In July 2022, the couple had to agree to a $300,000 bond each, and they both pleaded not guilty. A major disappointment happened in June 2023, when, due to a technicality in the wording of the indictment, District Judge Catherine Jones dropped the charges against Sheila Fletcher and Clay Fletcher after a May 30th hearing. However, District Attorney Sam DeQuilla decided to pursue the case again. The prosecutor said in a statement, "We will ensure there is justice for Lacey, and the public knows that caregivers will be charged for neglecting or abusing a person in their care." The couple is expected to be tried again later this year. This tragic story has touched hearts all over the nation. Such a heartbreaking story of such an innocent and helpless woman. Our hearts go out for Lacey. May she rest in peace, and may she finally have justice.